Hey everybody, thank you for coming. It is Wednesday, otherwise known as Hump Day, and things are just chopping sideways a little bit. But there's a lot of stuff to uncover because things are happening behind the scenes, and we know that post-halving, things can be quiet for 30 days. And we are, nearly halfway through that 30-day period. So maybe another 2 weeks of this non-action. But it's important to have a handle on exactly where things are going. So I'm going to spend some time on what I believe is the new mid-cycle theory of when we are halfway there and what that all looks like. Also covering up a few other things. One of my grand visions too is to accumulate all of the price predictions and price targets and create one master one and analyze that. So it'll give us a good idea as to what is possible. And even if you think it's outrageous, maybe just take half of the target or 3/4 of the target and use that as your anchor point as well. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, David Webb, as well. And the mods of the chat. I see you out there, Sean. And who else is in there? Everybody, thank you. Let's jump in. And this is called When Mid-Cycle Point. And big shout out to the team as well behind me. Teddy Chops says, joined Patreon in December. And that was the best thing I could have ever done. Thank you, Teddy. Although it has been a bit of a choppy year so far, but it's good to take advantage of some of the market opportunities that we have had. Bitcoin playlist will be here afterwards. Let's talk about some news and then spend a lot of time on the charts today. We have a lot. Solar, Bitcoin, and coffee. Good to see you, buddy. This one first. Game theory is on. Breaking news. Argentina is to mine Bitcoin using stranded gas with over 1,200 Bitcoin mining rigs, according to Forbes. And we see a lot of change happen in Argentina, including Javier Milei is only in office a couple of months, and he's already quashed inflation, which people thought he could never do. So sometimes a different approach is needed in politics. So shout out to Javier. And also shout out to Mark Moss. He had this video a couple of days ago. Hey, Digital Assets, good to see you. And he spoke of how the fact that nation by nation they will come around. And he was talking, I think, about nuclear power and how nuclear power energy stations create sometimes too much power. And now you have the ability to really uncrack the power of nuclear and other types of stranded energy and leverage Bitcoin mining as an option. And nation by nation will start to see this opportunity at their hands. And again, make mining, make the network more secure, make Bitcoin more pronounced in the world as well. And another crazy news too, I just came across this, and I'm not really mentioning it for any special reason, but when I first started this, I spoke a lot about the importance of being a WholeCoiner, but now maybe a HalfCoiner is new WholeCoiner because Bitcoin is so much more expensive now at $62,000, $63,000. This from Mecca Stuzilla. I've been buying since 2018 and haven't always had a lot of money to spend on Bitcoin, but I bought today and that pushed me over half a coin, and I didn't really have anyone to celebrate with since my wife thinks it's really stupid and a waste of money. But I thought you guys would be proud. Well, I am proud of you, so well done. Again, have a plan, stick with it. Keep on adding slice by slice, and your journey has taken you 6 years to get here. Well done. So very proud of you. And of course, keep your security tight. Next, what's interesting, this is the 13F filings, and it shows you all of the top holders of IBIT. What's very pronounced here is in pink. Hong Kong are the top holder of IBIT and the number 6 holder of IBIT. The rest are Americans, with a little bit of Switzerland thrown in there as well. But I thought this was very interesting, and it goes to show that other nations, not just US, are really stacking these ETFs as we go forward. Thank you as well, Dr. Sauce, for coming. Now, speaking of other nations, rumor has it, after South Korea's left-leaning Democratic Party won, I think, the recent elections. Could be off on that, though. I do not track politics very well at all. But efforts are underway to push regulators to approve a spot Bitcoin ETF, fulfilling a so-called pre-election promise to do this for Bitcoin. Now, the FSC, which is, I think, South Korea's equivalent of the US SEC, currently prohibits the issuance and trading of spot Bitcoin ETFs. However, this could all happen by June, if we're lucky, not too far away. Again, if this new group is there, I think I don't know when their National Assembly is, but sometime in June. And they do hope that it could pass shortly after that. So again, more dominoes slowly falling all over the world. And this thing is scarce. Now, a lot of people are upset. You know, the 2020 halving had a combination of C19 and a whole bunch of money printing. And we're not seeing the explosive results this time around. But we saw a big haircut last time in March 2020. And then May was the halving. And then things went completely bonkers. This time is a little slower, but that's okay because it gives more people time to stack. But hold in tight, everybody. It is coming. Wait till you see these charts. And this has gone around the circles where somebody gave a commencement speech in front of thousands and thousands of students. And he said, I encourage you to keep an open mind right now. I see Bitcoin as a very misunderstood asset class, and the crowd booed. The reason I'm mentioning this is the generation that needs Bitcoin most are the ones that least understand it, which is a big problem. So hopefully people will educate each other going forward. And it's shocking to think how uninformed people that go to university are. It shows you what they're teaching them in school is actually wrong. Anyway, irony not lost on me. Let's jump into charts. Got a lot of charts today. First of all, this is from the Titan of crypto, and he is looking at what's called a falling wedge structure. And I can kind of see what he sees, but he believes that the bounce back to 74,000 will be a lot sooner than many expect. And a falling wedge tends to bring about a spike that will catapult the price action. Again, not a big reach. 74K would be a new all-time high. 73.8 is the current all-time high. So we'll wait for that. And once we break through all-time highs, things can be a bit crazy. But we had the halving get in the way. Some of the big sell-offs from Grayscale get in the way too. We'll talk more about those and where we are right now in a few minutes. Let's talk about hash as well. Hash is very important. I do have an upcoming miner video. By the way, CleanSpark is releasing earnings after the market closes in about 20 minutes. And I will do a mining report after that, probably tomorrow or the next day, as soon as I can get all the numbers together. But we expect some fireworks for sure. Now, Vivek says the Bitcoin hash rate has been 4x higher since the last all-time high. Still, the price is at 62K. And according to his math, we should be at 250,000 instead. If the price follows the hash. Big if there. And this is from Crypto Quant, from Ki Jong-yu. Bitcoin network fundamentals could support a market cap of 3 times its current size compared to the last cyclical top, potentially sustaining a price of 265K. And they're looking at the market cap over hash ratio as well. Nate the Great, thank you for coming. So a lot of things are pointing to the correlation that the fact Bitcoin price, even though it's very high, still, it is not as high as it was in previous cycles when benchmarked against the hash rate. Very important. Price follows the hash. I do believe that because the more hash, the more security, the more trust there should be in the network. That's my simple logical thinking as well. Now, I did mention something yesterday too that some people had confused. They thought I was calling for a $500,000 Bitcoin price. No, this is Plan B's stock to flow price targets on a table. Okay. And you can see here, again, this caused so much confusion yesterday. But the point is, last cycle, it missed the stock to flow target by 33%. This cycle, what is it going to do? We are not sure. But even if it's 50% wrong, which the worst it's been wrong in the past was 33% off, even if it's 50% wrong, it still takes us to 239K, which coincidentally is very close to Crypto Quant's target of 265. So when you come at kind of price targets and you find different methods bringing about the same confluence, that can give you more confidence in the actual numbers. And that's what I look for a lot as well. That's why I'm bringing all these models together. And right now I've got like 68 of them and trying to find a thread or a pattern of a reasonable price prediction. Thank you, Linda, for coming. So I hope that's all clear. Now let's talk about cycles and where we are and why this time is different. Yet again, I sound like a broken record. This is from can't recall the name. Hang on, I'm completely blanking on who put this together. But if you go to Twitter and look up magic bands, you'll see this pop up. Now, level 3 of the magic band looms as the next Bitcoin target, which is $91,184. And it's normal for price to sometimes stop in between and consolidate before reaching a bigger goal, a new all-time high. And the cycle top band has now expanded to 122,884, which has been hit every single cycle since Bitcoin began. And this band can keep increasing as price rises. Just like the 200-day moving average, just like the short-term holder cost basis, it can keep going up. And it's not beyond the realm of possibility that this magic band will go to 150 before we are done. So stay tuned for that as well. But even at 122K, that would be nearly a 10x from the bottom, which is already very impressive. There's also a lot of talk out there in the community. Some people are late to the party and they want another 10x. But I don't want to throw a wet blanket on things. But the point is, we've already done a huge amount. And for another huge amount to come is simply very, very unlikely. So I just want to set expectations, everybody as well. That's the importance of being in the market, in the bear market. Remember, next time around, do not check out during the bear market. Stay in the game. It's the most important time. The bull market is when you just sit there with your seatbelt and you just ride, but you pack in the bear. Very important. Now, let's look at the midpoint cycle. Interesting piece here. This is from Crypto Caesar. And he talks about how the Bitcoin 4-year cycle is distinct from the halving cycle, and it's calculated from one market peak to the next, and one bottom peak, bottom to the subsequent bottom. Now, historically, Bitcoin's accelerated growth phase has occurred after the halving event. All right, very important. After, not before, and at the midpoint of each 4-year cycle. Okay, so a lot of people think the top is in. We hit the all-time high. Now we're going back down because of diminishing cycles. That's not true at all. But what is very important is to identify where the mid-cycle point is, because after we hit that, things go bombastic. That's why this is important. That's what this video is dedicated to. And shout out to Crypto Caesar for the inspiration as well for this concept. Now let's break down the 10-month chart. Now, the reason I always talk about 9 or 10 months is that's when most of the price action happens after the halving. But the twist this time around is we had the all-time high happen before the halving. The question is, does that impact this whole cycle theory? And let's jump into this as well. So if we look at this chart, again, shout out to Crypto Caesar. In the current cycle, Bitcoin has breached its previous all-time high prior to the halving and the midpoint, suggesting maybe there could be an earlier than expected start to the accelerated growth phase, the manic phase, which happens at the midpoint after the halving. Now, the launch of the spot Bitcoin ETF in January has been a factor and thrown everything out of kilter here because a ton of money has come into the space. And it's brought prices higher earlier than normal. And we still haven't seen the full effect of the actual halving and the impact on actual supply. But if the mania phase lasts around 300 days, okay, call it 10 months, 30 times 10 is 300 days, as it has historically, Bitcoin might see its final top late, now this time in Q1 2025, much sooner than September timeframe 2025. And that is if this 4-year cycle continues. However, with the ETFs, with the game theory, that may be off the table. But the point is, the next 4 to 8 weeks will give us a clearer indication of which path Bitcoin will follow in the cycle. And there's also possibility of a 2-top cycle similar to 2013. And either way, it's going to be super exciting. And remember, this time is different, very different. Things are harder, and there's more demand, and there's more money, and there's more mayhem on the planet too, which we'll talk about in a second. Also, Yet another target. This is from Tardigrade, and it talks about the halving to halving increment. So 5,000% gain halving to halving in the first halving cycle, 2,000 in the second, 800% in the third, and now we have people are unsure of the 800%, but Bitcoin fell to about 4,000, shot up to 69,000. That's where the 800% comes from. And then they are estimating 300% gain this cycle. And a 300% gain from halving to halving would take us to $200,000 approximately. Basically, previous all-time high, multiply by 3. So either way, a lot of things are pointing to a target a lot higher than 120, 100, 150. But we'll hammer all those together real soon. Now, the other thing that makes Bitcoin more important this time around too is a great little chart. It is actually some data points shouted out by Carl Menger on Twitter, and I decided to look at it and put it into a chart and analyze it. So it's a great way to think, if your friends are not convinced. And I had a conversation with a very smart doctor yesterday who still doesn't believe in it. He thinks it's magic internet money. And this is why I kind of put this chart together for him. But basically, how long does it take for your fiat to have in purchasing power? So if you look at all the inflation rates, so for example, if you assume the government is going for this magical 2% inflation rate, it takes 35 years for your money to have. If it goes to 4%, it's about 17 years. If it goes to 7%, it's 10 years. If it goes to 10%, it's 7 years. All right. And Shadow Stats say since 1981, the average inflation that Americans have seen is 10% since 1981. If that is true, it takes 7 years for your fiat to halve in value. Think of it as a half-life. If it goes higher, which it will in the future, like say 13%, 5 years, 17%, 4 years, and 20%, 3.5 years. So you have $1 million sitting in a bank account. All right. Half is gone in 3.5 years if inflation's at 20%. Half. And that's very hard for people to reckon with. Another view of how Bitcoin is a hedge, and I just love these charts because it puts everything in very simple context that people can relate to for your loved ones to really help them explain what you can do. For example, a house. Everybody can relate to owning a castle. In 2016, the average house in the US is $288K. That was 664 Bitcoin to buy that house. That 664 Bitcoin today is worth $42.5 million. And if you go to last cycle, 2020, which is not that long ago, it was average house went up to 330,000. It cost 45 Bitcoin. That is $2.9 million today. So again, more houses get more expensive. The dollar goes less far, but Bitcoin goes a lot further. Now you can buy a more expensive house that costs more fiat for only 6 Bitcoin. And again, hopefully this will help people wrap their heads around the importance of that hedge. And a lot of people believe the sell in May, go away is in play, but no, it's not. I did come across this as well. Not during election years. Very, very important. It's from Daniel Chavez and GSGIR. And history shows that the mid-May to mid-June seasonal period is very, very strong during election years. Again, if things aren't different. And we're nearly in mid-May right now, so that could be good for the stock market, but we shall see. Either way, election years outperform non-election years, and that's the important thing to note. And finally, before we get into the ETF charts, more charts, Bitcoin hedges this. We are at $34.59 trillion in debt, and nothing is stopping this. Remember, the more debt, the more money printing, the more debasement, and the more of this. Okay, that's all you need to know. Holding fiat is a losing strategy. It's theft. And if you like being robbed, hold on to your fiat. If you don't, do something different. Financial advice right there. Now, Bitcoin black hole. Let's go. Let's look at day 81. Raw numbers of the ETFs. You can see here, We had a down day, negative -15.7, because the bleed was back for Grayscale, down 28.6. And after 2 bonkers days, there was nothing happening for the ETFs, with the exception of a little trickle in for BTCO, a little bit of ARC, and a little bit of Fidelity. Otherwise, nothing. Nothing. Super quiet. And Wednesdays aren't normally quiet as well. And another interesting observation by Coinshares, they estimate the average purchase price of all the ETFs since they launched on January 11th was about $62,200 per Bitcoin. But as the price fell 10% below that level, it may have triggered automatic sell orders and got people out of their positions. People had stop losses in place. And that's why we see a lot of action out. But at the same time, it has been a crazy 81 days with nearly $13 billion in inflows, which has had a big impact on the price, and it's brought a lot of the cycle perhaps a little bit forward, or maybe the cycle will remain the same, but things will just be a lot more higher, and there will be no diminished returns compared to the last cycle. Also, another view of where we are after those 2 days of greatness, boom, back to flat line and negative. Not good. Total money flow -15.7 out. Not too good. And we are literally right at that pink line, which is kind of on trend, but I do expect a rebound to happen once we get out of the next week or two of doldrums. 34 billion into 9 new ETFs. Grayscale negative again, but above again that purple trend line, which is so important. We don't want to go below that, but I think they're mostly bled out anyway, or as Michael Sonnenschein says, they've reached equilibrium. Now, how many were taken from the system or added to the system? Yesterday, we had 252 Bitcoin added to the system, and that is very little. Okay, so even though the ETFs are negative, it is a bit of a nothing burger, and we're right on that green trend line as well. So nothing really surprising, except for, yes, the ETFs technically sold 252 Bitcoin yesterday. And with the T+1, we don't even know when they're hitting the market. Maybe it's last night, maybe it's this morning. I don't know. Let's check on the price of Bitcoin right now and see how sucky it is. 62.3, and we've been down here for quite a while now. But guess what? We had 252 Bitcoin added to the system yesterday. I dumped on the system. And Mr. 100 bought 600 in the last 24 hours. So to put things in perspective, the ETFs are less important now, and there's more money coming in, and there's more people hodling, there's more people mining, more people stacking. And if you think for a second that if Argentina starts mining Bitcoin, that they're just going to sell it in the open market, no, because they're using free stranded energy. And they'll start stacking too. And who knows, perhaps one day they could follow the El Salvador model. So with that, game theory has been on, and that was the mid-cycle of how it could be different this time around. So be prepared to hit the eject button, maybe Q1 2025, or we could be on this train for the next 8 years. We will know when we get closer to the time. So thank you all for coming. Hope you hit the like. 4,500 people watching. Thank you to the mods in the chat too. I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good night. Bye-bye.